everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are doing very well today. So today's video is obviously anticipated. I mentioned that I was going to be doing this style video in my top 3 in every category video. I will link that one down below if you missed it. That was going to be all about my top 3 favorite makeup category, or top 3 favorite makeup products in every category, excluding eyeshadow palettes, which is going to be what we're focusing on in today's video. So I'm so excited. I was inspired to do this video by seriously a favorite YouTuber of mine that I've just been watching so much of her content lately, probably because she has so much content, and it's Just Stuff. That's her YouTube channel name. It's Just Stuff. I will link her channel down below. I've been loving her content. I've been loving her videos. So definitely go check her out. I think that her content is really inspiring. She talks a lot about, you know, favorites and worst products and best products and favorite eyeshadow palettes and everything. Like, she does palette weeks. I seriously just really love her channel. But she inspired me to do this video, but it was actually created by Angelica Nyqvist, who created the eyeshadow palette category type video. So I will also link her channel down below because I want to give full credit to those two lovely ladies. But let's go ahead and get started. I have a lot of different eyeshadow palettes to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it. So the first category are neutral palettes, and I have quite a few favorites here, but to limit it, which I had to. Firstly, this has been a palette that has quickly stolen my heart. I tried out this palette for the first time this year, and I love it so much. And it is the Sydney Grace Love's Journey palette. This one is stunning, you guys. It looks very boring in the palette, I know, but it is seriously so beautiful. I love the shimmer formula of Sydney Grace. I think the matte formula is really nice from Sydney Grace as well. If you are looking for something that's very smooth on the eyes, maybe you have more mature eyelids, Sydney Grace's formula is perfect for that. I highly recommend them. They are an indie brand, so they are going to be a little bit more expensive, but this is such a high performing palette and formula that I think it is worth the price personally. But if you are interested on purchasing anything from Sydney Grace that's going to be discounted or on sale, I highly recommend that you check out their Christmas and July sale. I think that is a great time to pick up some Sydney Grace palettes and Sydney Grace products. And that's when I picked this up, and I'm just, again, so in love with this one. So this is definitely by far one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. And then, of course, did you think I would go through this video and not mention my Natasha Denona Biba palette? You guys, this has been a long time favorite of mine. I love this one so much. She is beat up completely. Ignore the mask in the mirror. But she's beat up because I seriously love her so much. I have to be very careful with her because the black shade does come out of the pan. But here's what this pretty one looks like. Seriously, such a just high performing neutral palette. I love this so much. I love the thought that Natasha Denona put into this palette because I feel like you seriously have all the mattes that you need. This is a very matte heavy palette, but I'm okay with it because, again, I just feel like these are the mattes that you need in a neutral everyday eyeshadow palette. So love this one, and of course I had to mention it in this category. All right, next up in the neutral palette category, this is another one that has just quickly become a favorite of mine. It's quickly become one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection, and that is the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette. This is beautiful, you guys. So pretty. I love the layout of this palette, how it has mattes in the first and bottom rows, or the top and bottom rows, and then in the center row you have all of the shimmers. And again, kind of similar to what I was saying about the Natasha Denona Biba palette, that I feel like the matte and the shimmer shades that you get in here are just everything that you need to create the most, you know, a most beautiful, stunning look. So Really recommend this one. And the thing is, unfortunately about Lunar Beauty is they do not go on sale very often, but if you can find a discount code, or if you can just be on the lookout for this sale, or for a sale for Lunar Beauty, I highly recommend checking this one out. The next category is colorful palettes. Now, I had a really hard time with this category because I don't wear a lot of color. I really don't. I'm pretty plain Jane when it comes to eyeshadow, when it comes to makeup in general. Honestly, in my life in general, I don't wear a lot of color. However, I still have some favorites, and this one was very easy for me to pick, and that is the Give Me Glow Cosmetics Pastel Dreams palette. This is by far one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. I have used the heck out of this, and it doesn't even look like I've touched it because this formula is so pigmented. The shimmer shades are so pigmented. This is one of the best eyeshadow formulas I've ever tried. I was literally blown away whenever I saw just how good this formula was, like whenever I used this palette for the first time. And I think what blew me away the most was that this is a pastel palette, and just how it performs. Even though they're pastels, they're so pigmented, and because of that, I do think this palette will work for a variety of skin tones, which is always really good. So yes, by far one of my favorite colorful palettes in my collection. There is not a single spring and summer season that this palette goes untouched because I just enjoy it so much. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to this palette, even though I feel like I sing its praises all the time. The second palette in this colorful palette category was one that I picked up this year. It's a new to me formula that I tried out this year, and I was blown away, like seriously blown away. And that is the Cozy Cabin palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics. This palette, I can't even explain how stunning this palette is. I wasn't even remotely interested in trying out this palette, but then I saw Heather Austin's review on this palette, and the looks that she came up with were seriously out of this world. I highly recommend checking out Heather Austin if you need inspiration on eye looks. I don't know how she does it, but she just pairs colors so well together, and they make sense to me. There's a lot of YouTubers that I watch where they create beautiful eyeshadow looks, don't get me wrong, but the color combination may not always make sense. She makes it make sense to me. I feel like when she does that look, I'm like, you know what? I can do that myself. That makes sense to me. Those colors make sense to me. I can recreate that look on my own. And that is what inspired me to pick up this palette. And let me tell you, I'm so glad that I did, because the shifts in this palette, the color combinations that I've done with this palette have been so beautiful. I've gotten compliments on my eye look whenever I use this palette. And this is actually a Texas, this palette was made in Texas. So that makes me really excited. I am from Texas, and so I always love supporting, local brands, but even something so close to home. So, really pleased with this palette, and this is definitely one of my favorite, most colorful palettes in my collection. All right, then this palette, this is the third palette in the colorful palette category, and I don't know if you would consider this colorful, but keep in mind, like I said, again, I am not a very colorful person, but the Odin's Eye Snow Dreams palette, or Snow Dream palette, is beautiful. I am so impressed with this formula. Again, I've had the greatest time this year trying out some indie products, and the Merry Christmas palette as well as the Snow Dream palette from Odin's Eye has just been really high performing, and I've really enjoyed both of them. But I put this one in here because the Merry Christmas palette will be in a different category, so stay tuned. But here's the Snow Dream palette. I really enjoy, again, the color story. I think it is so beautiful. It's so festive, and I also put this one in the colorful category because it actually has a holographic shade in here, and holographic clearly means it's very colorful, right? There's going to be all types of shifts to this specific shade, and I haven't put it on my eyes yet, but I am seriously so excited to do that, and to just continue playing around with this formula, to continue playing around with this palette. So that is the third and final palette in the colorful palette category. Then we have monochromatic palettes, and I feel like monochromatic palettes can have, a different description, right? You can have a solo purple palette that's obviously very monochromatic, but you can also have a palette where maybe it's neutral, but you can kind of create very similar looks with it. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because I feel like the Natasha Denona bronze palette is definitely a monochromatic palette. The looks that you're going to come up with using this palette are going to be very, very similar. Some of them may even look like you created literally the same look, but this is just one of my favorites. I don't care if it ends up looking repetitive or that the look that I come out with look very similar. I don't care. I seriously just love this palette so much. Every summer, every fall, I use this palette. It never goes untouched year after year. I always reach for it. This is, I think, one of the first midi palettes that Natasha Denona came out with, and it was so many people's favorites at that year that it came out, and it's still one of my favorites by far. So yes, love this palette. It's definitely a favorite monochromatic moment for me. Now we're taking it back quite a bit. This palette has unfortunately become discontinued, which is so upsetting, and that is the ABH Norvina palette. This is literally one of my favorite palettes of all time, but it's definitely a favorite monochromatic palette for sure, because this is very purpley toned. A lot of the colors you're going to be playing around with are going to be leaning more towards pinks, are going to be leaning more towards purples, and I don't mind it. I love this palette. I feel like for it being kind of a monochromatic palette, it still has some range within it. I love it so much. If you have it, pull it out, use it. Mine is very expired, but I don't care. It's still performing fine. I don't have any reactions when I use it, so I'm certainly going to continue using it because this is one of my favorite palettes of all time. So really, really love that one. And then another palette that is monochromatic, but I just love it so much, is the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette. RIP BH Cosmetics, RIP. I miss them so much. I love so many of their palettes. I love so many of their products. I love their brushes. I still use their brushes to this day, but the Avocado Toast palette is very, very green, obviously, right? It's the Avocado Toast palette. But I love this. I can't believe that I didn't think of this automatically whenever I was, writing down my notes for this video. I was so shocked that I didn't think of this right away. But whenever I was looking through my collection, I'm like, oh yeah, the Avocado Toast palette from BH. This is definitely very monochromatic, but I love it. I love playing with green and purple. Those are probably my favorite colors to wear if I'm dabbing into color. Those are my favorites. Those are the ones I naturally kind of gravitate towards. And this one is by far a favorite. It performs seriously so well. If you can still get this, I highly recommend that you do. Then we have small palettes, and this was kind of hard. I'm not super into small palettes. I just still love a good 9 pan, 12 pan, 15 pan eyeshadow palette. I just still love palettes like that. So this was a little bit harder for me, but I did come up with some things here. So firstly, this is one that is a perfect everyday, just workhorse product for me. It's a workhorse palette for me, and that is the Glossier Trio. These are called the Monochrome's Essential Eyeshadow Trio, and I do have the shade Almond. I know that this looks really, really boring in the pan. I know that, but this is the most beautiful, beautiful color story. It looks so effortless, but also just very editorial on the lids. I really, really like that about this little palette here. And I also love that it's like different finishes. So these two do look very different. So I use all three colors whenever I go into this palette. I use the matte shade, obviously in the crease, and then I put on this like more satiny shimmer on the lids, and then I top it with this color here, which is a lot more impactful. And so I still feel like you get a really impactful look, even though it is so monochromatic, and even though it's still just three colors and a little bit boring looking, I still think that this is very impactful. So that was definitely one I had to mention for favorite small palettes. Also, the Natasha Denona Mini Star palette. I think for me, this is probably not my favorite mini from her, but the reason I love this one so much and why I put it in here is because for a 5pan palette, I feel like she did a really, really good job at making this very versatile. I feel like you can come up with at least 3 or 4 different eyeshadow looks with this palette, even though there are only 5 shades. You have, again, a good mid-tone crease color, a good deepening color, and then various looks or various shades you can put on the lids. You could even do, if you wanted, this like deeper gold in the outer corner as well. I mean, there's some different looks that you can create with this palette, and I love how versatile it is. So I did have to include this one in the small palette category. And then the final palette in the small palette category is the Tom Ford Nude Dip Quad. I really, really love this one. This is one that I picked up at a cosmetic company outlet store, so I did not pay full price for this, thank God. But this palette is so effortless, kind of similar to what I was saying about the Glossier. This is very editorial looking. It's very effortless. It looks like you've put in a lot of effort when you didn't. These shadows, while I don't think they're worth that price tag, I mean, regardless, this is just luxury, right? It's just luxury. That's why the price is what it is. However, these shadows, they perform so like effortless. You know what I'm saying? Like they just look like you put in more work than you actually did. These are not going to be that same, you know, Simply Posh Cosmetics shimmer formula. Like these are very, very just understated type of shimmer looks, and that's okay with me. Sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes that's going to be what I'm gravitating towards more for work or something like that. And I love this. It's so beautiful. It's definitely by far my most used Tom Ford quad, because I only have 3, but I definitely gravitate towards this one the most. Then we have affordable palettes, and I really struggled with this one because while I have a lot of affordable palettes in my collection, it's hard for me to like name favorites because I just feel like a lot of my favorite palettes are going to unfortunately be my higher end palettes, my luxury palettes, but I did come up with some. So I do have 2 Wet n Wild palettes, and so these are going to be, you know, spots 1 and 2 in the category, and that is 2 of the Color Icon palettes from Wet n Wild. So firstly, Nude Awakening. I'm a broken record about this palette. I've spoken about this palette so often on my channel. I need to pull this one out. I don't think I've worn it in a hot minute, but this is a really, really good everyday palette. It's going to be perfect for work. Again, I even use this whenever I think my husband and I were taking photos. It wasn't like professionally done or anything, but we were just taking some photos for our anniversary, like outside in our backyard. And this is the palette that I chose, and it turned out beautiful, or beautifully. It also is a special occasion palette for me. I've worn it on my anniversary, you know, many times. But yeah, I mean, I just really like this one. I do. I think it's a really high performing palette, not just for the price, but just in general, you guys. I really, really enjoy this one. The second Wet n Wild Color Icon palette is the Call Me Sunshine palette. This one is so surprising to me. I was really, really shocked at how good this palette actually is. I shouldn't have been because I enjoy the Color Icon Nude Awakening palette so much, but this one is really good. I picked this up off of Sarah Rose's recommendation. She just raved about how good this palette was, and it seriously really is really good. I love this shimmer shade. Oops. I love this shimmer shade right here so much. It's almost like a little bit of a duochrome, and again, for a palette being around $5, I think that that's really, really good. So I really enjoy this one. I do. I highly recommend it. It's a cute little monochromatic moment, and very affordable as well, and very cute color story, especially for summer. Okay, and then we're getting to the indie palettes category. So like I was saying earlier, this year I did a really good job at branching out and trying out some new indie palettes, trying out some new eyeshadow formulas. And one of the brands I tried was Fantasy Cosmetica, and I wanted to try out their Druid palette. And this is definitely a favorite indie palette in my collection. I really, really enjoy the color story. Again, it's this beautiful green color story. Like I was saying about the Avocado Toast palette, green is kind of a neutral for me. I do feel like it's a lot more wearable than like a bright blue or something like that, because again, you can still incorporate some greens with like browns and some mid-tone, so it can still look a little bit more neutral. And this palette just performs really well. I will say I prefer the shimmer shades in here more so than the mattes, but the mattes still perform really well also. But yeah, I was really impressed with this one. I wanted to reach for it a lot whenever I purchased it, and I really enjoyed the looks that I came up with. Then I wanted to try out again another palette formula that's new to me, and that is the Nomad Cosmetics formula. And I purchased the Ghost Town USA palette. I love when they do like these shifts. I think that's so fun. And this is a really nice color story. A lot of people enjoyed this color story this year because I feel like it's a neutral palette still. Like, yes, it has color. Yes, it has purple and blue, but they're very muted. They're a little bit more understated. And so I feel like this is still very approachable to a lot of people, especially people that may not wear a lot of color. And so I think that this palette makes it a little bit more approachable to do color. But yeah, I really like this formula. The shimmer shades are also really special in this palette because they're very creamy, but they're still very impactful on the lids. So I need to use this one more. It's definitely not super used. I need to play around with it some more. But the looks I did create with this palette, I really enjoyed, and a lot of people are enjoying this one this year. And then my final palette for the indie palette category is the What's Up Beauty Geodes palette. This one is so stunning. I really enjoy this formula as well. I also think that this is a pretty underrated brand. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about this brand yet, but this is a really nice palette. It's also very high performing. The shimmer shades in here are just absolutely stunning. And yeah, I really enjoy this one. I think it's really beautiful. Not much to say about it, honestly. I just really like it. It's definitely a favorite indie palette that I tried this year. So really enjoy What's Up Beauty. I really want to try their Dragon's Eye palette. Oh my gosh, that palette looks so beautiful. That's definitely on my list. Now we're going to get into my favorite high-end palettes. So I felt like this question was a little bit redundant, but I still have some favorites that I want to share with you today. So firstly, the Natasha Denona Retro palette. This is definitely one of my favorite palettes from Natasha Denona. She just keeps like topping herself, I feel like, because she has come out with so many beautiful palettes, and I just continue to love so many of my Natasha Denona palettes. But the retro palette is still very loved by me. I love this color story. This is a neutral palette to me. Even though this is colorful in the sense of that it's like purples and mauvey tones, it's not like neutrals. This is still neutral to me because I still think that this is very wearable for work. I think this is very wearable for every day. This is a palette where, yes, you have the mauvey tones, but you still have some taupes in here as well. And I just love every single look that I come up with when I use this palette. And I love how, again, it's approachable, right? So it's like purples, it has some mauvey tones, but it is very approachable. So, and of course it has that really good Natasha Denona formula. Then another one of my favorite palettes of life, and so sad that it's been discontinued. They came out with a 9-pan of this palette this year, and I really wish that they would have just re-released this palette, and that is the ABH Sultry palette. You guys, this is just so good. It is so good. I used this one this year, or like literally a few days ago, and I was just so blown away at how good this palette still is, at how beautiful these metallic shades are. Like seriously, they just look so stunning on the eyes. I think we'll always love the ABH formula, but something about these older palettes from them just are so close and near and dear to my heart. Like seriously, because they're just so high performing. This is one of the formulas that I just fell in love with. It's one of the first high-end formulas that I fell in love with. So I love this palette so much. I still use it every single year, and I just cannot get over this one. And I really wish that they would bring it back, because I would definitely purchase a brand new one and a more updated one, because I'm sure this one's expired. All right, and the last palette in the high-end palette category is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. This one is really good, you guys. I apologize for the amount of Natasha Denona in this video, but she just makes my favorite eyeshadow formula, so I'm sorry, but she's gonna make it in every single category. I feel like I just need to speak about my Natasha Denona palettes all the time, but this one is good. It really is good. I think what I love most about this palette is that there's so much range in here. I feel like oftentimes with her palettes, they're very monochromatic. You can make some of the same looks over and over again. You might even have some of the same like outer corner shades, like maybe it's just a matte brown or something. But in here, you have so many options. You have a black in here. You have a plum in here. You have like a more kind of like burnt, kind of toasty brown there. And then of course the shimmer shades, you have so many to choose from. You have like peachy ones, you have more taupey ones, you have even like a duochrome here. And then for the mid-tones or like the crease colors, you have a more like light brown, you have peachy colors. I mean, there's just so much range in here. There's so many different ways to go about creating a look with this palette. And I feel like that's very unique to her line. Like I said, I just feel like she doesn't really do that very often with her palettes, but this one is definitely an exception to that because I feel like this one is just very versatile. So I do really enjoy this one. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the final category. And that is list or what are your top 3 favorite palettes that were new to you this year. So something I didn't mention at the beginning of the video was that I was trying really hard not to repeat palettes because some of these could just go in different categories, right? Some of these could have gone in the affordable or the neutral or my favorite indie, you know what I mean? Like there were different categories where some of these palettes could have fit in, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't repeating palettes. So just know that just because I'm naming these 3 as my top doesn't mean that these are my top 3 that I tried this year. No, these are just, again, ones that I love that are definitely in the top. However, it could have been other ones too. But anyways, new this year, my top 3, definitely the Odin's Eye Merry Christmas palette. This was re-released this year. I was a dummy and did not purchase this last year whenever it came out. I didn't realize just how stunning and beautiful this actually was and how much I would have loved it in my collection. So I did pick this one up this year and I'm so glad that I did because this is stunning. This is so stunning. Again, the Odin's Eye formula is really nice. I wasn't super impressed with it when I tried it earlier this year. I kind of mentioned that, I think, in my eyeshadow palette collection video. But I'm so impressed with the Merry Christmas palette as well as the Snow Dream palette. And this is by far a favorite of mine. I'm so happy that I got this. I'm definitely going to be using this on Christmas Day because why not? Or why wouldn't you, really, right? So yeah, definitely a favorite and I'm so happy to have it. And I just love this packaging so much. It makes me so happy. Then we have the Urban Decay Moon Dust palettes. And I put both of them in here because I have both of them. I wasn't going to purchase both of them, but I was like, you know what, let's do it. I started out with the Space Rider palette. And let me tell you, I use this all the time. I use this all the time. I purchased, I think, both of these from Ulta. And I just use these so much. I use them so regularly. These are definitely going to be a favorite of mine in my like best makeup product of 2023 video because this is seriously just so good. I use these all the time. Space Cowboy, I mean, I use all of them. I seriously do. I love Star Cowgirl in the inner corner. Space Cowboy is obviously stunning. I love all of them. I do. I love all of them so much. So happy and pleased with these palettes. Also, I decided to pick up, because I loved the Space Rider one so much, I picked up Galactic Cowgirl, and I do love this one as well. I need to use this one more. I'm also dying to try out this beautiful silver shade, but I love Cosmic Cowgirl in the inner corner, so I love these, and these are by far some of my favorite palettes that I tried this year. I love how just convenient these are for me, just to kind of like run into them really quickly and throw them either on my lid or in my inner corner. So I have thoroughly enjoyed these. And then finally, of course, you know I had to mention this palette, and that is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This is going to be everybody's favorite this year because it just is. It's such a good palette. I love how just everyday and work appropriate this palette is. This is something where you don't know what you want to come up with. You don't know what look you're going into or what look you want to do. You don't know maybe what you're wearing for work that day or just in general. This is the type of palette for that, right? This is the type of palette where regardless of what you're going to wear, regardless of where you're going, this is going to work for you. This is essentially a workhorse palette for sure. And yeah, I'm very impressed with this palette. I also really wanted to gravitate towards this whenever I first got it. And it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I have other palettes that I want to test out and try out and use. So I've had to put it down, but this one is definitely easily a favorite of mine that I would totally use every single day. But those are all of the top 3 favorite palettes in each category. I hope that you enjoyed. Again, I will check out It's Just Steph as well as Angelica Nyqvist's channel down below. Please be sure to check them out. I'm sure you already know who they are and you probably already subscribed to them, but I just wanted to share that with you because that is my inspiration for this video. But I hope you enjoyed. Comment below, do you agree with some of my picks? Are there any other categories that you think I should have added to this collection or to this video? And of course, maybe answer the different categories yourself. I would love to hear from you. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, I would love for you to subscribe and be a part of my YouTube channel family here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye!